What's up, everybody? Hello and welcome to Not Your Average Meta, an MTG Commander channel dedicated to bringing you decks and commanders you wouldn't normally find in your average meta. On this week's episode of Not Your Average Meta, the crew decided with the rising popularity of zombies in the Magic the Gathering world that they needed to play some of their own zombie decks in honor of spooky season. First up, we have Gavin playing his mono-black zombie deck led by Ayara, First of Locthwain. This deck looks to take advantage of creating zombie tokens in order to drain the table with Ayara's ability before sacking them for more value. Next, we have Jacob, a first-timer on the channel, playing his precious Gisa and Geralf deck. This is the finely tuned zombie deck that looks to mill through his library until he hits one of his many game-winning combos. Next, we have Justin playing the one and only Scarab God. This is his classic Scarab God deck that we've seen many times in the past. With this deck, he's looking to build up a zombie army in order to get the ultimate value off Scarab God's life-draining scry ability. Lastly, we have Foggerl playing his freshly built Nevinyrral Urborg Tyrant deck. This deck is a 3-drop zombie tribal deck where every card in the deck has a CMC of 3. With this deck, he looks to control the board, all while using his commander's ETB ability to create a zombie token army. Now the other fighters, let's step into the Thunderdome and see which deck will come out on top. Turn 1, Fog plays an island and passes. Gavin plays a swamp, then taps 1 for a Shambling Ghast. Jacob plays an island, then taps 1 for a Soul Ring, then taps his Soul Ring for a Skull Clamp and passes. Justin draws for turn and plays an island. Fog draws and plays a swamp and passes. Gavin plays another swamp for turn, then goes to combat attacking Jacob for 1. Jacob draws for turn and plays a swamp. He then taps out to cast his commander, Gisa and Geralf, milling 4 cards as they enter. Justin draws for turn and plays a swamp, before tapping 2 to cast Night's Whisper, drawing 2 and losing 2 life. Fog draws and plays a second island. He then taps 3 and enchants Gisa and Geralf with Imprisoned in the Moon, turning them into a land. Gavin draws and taps 1 for a Dark Ritual. He then uses his 3 black mana to cast his commander Ayara. When she enters, each of his opponents loses a life and he gains 1. Jacob starts his turn, tapping out in order to cast Tormod the Desecrator. Justin draws and plays Castle Locthwain for turn, then taps 3 for Oath of Liliana, making each opponent sack a creature. Everybody then sacks a creature and Gavin makes a treasure. Fog draws and plays an Evolving Wilds for turn. He then taps 3 to cast Falcon Abomination, getting a Decayed Zombie token. Fog then cracks his Wilds to go get a tap Plains. Gavin draws and taps 1 to cast an Expedition map and passes. Jacob draws for turn and plays a swamp. He then taps 1 for a Gravecrawler and another 1 for a Carrion Feeder. He then clamps his Gravecrawler to draw 2 cards before tapping 3 for an Ashnod's Altar. Justin plays an Unholy Grotto for turn, then taps 4 to cast Vindictive Lich. Fog draws for turn and plays another swamp. He then casts Frantic Search, drawing 2, discarding 2, and untapping 3 lands. Fog then taps 2 to foretell a card, and then taps another 2 to foretell a second card. He then goes to combat and swings his Abomination to Gavin in the air for 2. Gavin draws and casts Timorak Calls the Dead. He then mills 3 cards and exiles a creature, creating a 2/2 zombie token. Each of his opponents then lose a life and he gains a life. Jacob draws for turn and plays another swamp. He then taps 6 for a Rooftop Storm. Jacob then casts an Undead Augur and a Mire Triton, milling 2 cards and gaining 2 life. He then plays a Stitcher Supplier, milling 3 more cards. He then demonstrates the loop of him sacking the Gravecrawler to his Carrion Feeder, causing him to lose a life and draw a card. He then casts a Champion of the Perished. He then continues his loop a number of times, pumping up his creatures before sacking the Augur and casting Grey Merchant, draining his opponents for 7 while he gains 21 life. He then declares he's going to loop the Gravecrawler enough times to make both of his creatures 40/40. He then swings his 40/40 Carrion Feeder at Fog, who in response casts Rise of the Dreadmarn from exile, creating 49 zombie tokens. He then chump blocks his creature with a zombie token. Jacob then regrets his life decisions and casts a Death Baron before passing. Justin draws and plays an island for turn, then taps 5 for Liliana's Mastery, creating 2 zombie tokens. Fog draws and plays an island for turn, then goes to combat. Fog then sends 35 zombies at Jacob and his Abomination along with 14 other zombies at Justin. Jacob blocks 5 of Fog's zombies but still takes 60 damage, getting taken out of the game. While Justin only blocks 1 zombie, going down to 5 life, and makes Fog discard 2 cards. Fog then taps out to cast his commander Nevinyrral, creating 5 tap zombie tokens and passes. Gavin draws for turn and then remembers to mill 3 off of his saga, exiling another creature and creating another zombie token. Each of his opponents then lose a life as he enters and he gains a life. He then sacks his expedition map to go get a swamp and plays it for turn. Gavin then asks if Justin has any way to deal with Fog's board and passes. Justin draws and plays a Field of Ruin for turn. He then taps 4 for a Ghoul Caller Gisa, then taps another one to cast his own Gravecaller. Fog starts his turn and untaps his lands. He then taps 3 for Nantuko Husk and goes to combat. He swings his commander and Abomination and 10 zombies at Justin, and his other 34 zombies at Gavin, winning the game. Today's big winner is Fog picking up a second win in a row. Even though I won, I think the game could have gone a lot differently if Jacob didn't try and take me out in one turn. Giving me those 49 zombies really accelerated the game, but a win is a win. Fun fact, Esper decks are now 3-0 on the channel. The MVP of today's game has to be Rise of the Dreadmarn. I think Foretell is a really sweet card mechanic, and adding the surprise of trap cards to Magic the Gathering is actually a really fun idea. Other than that, there's not really much else to say about this card outside of, wow, that escalated quickly. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you can see more games and decks you wouldn't normally see in your average meta.